Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the Osterville Village Library. My name is Amy Wolf. I'm the programming coordinator. We are excited to welcome Dorothy Skelley with her amazing book, Postcards from a Pandemic. I'm mesmerized by the pictures here. I had the pleasure of meeting with Dorothy several weeks ago, and we are blessed to have her opening here at the Osterville Village Library. So thank you so much for joining us on a beautiful Saturday, finally. Everybody.
Thank you, Amy, and the Osterville Village Library for hosting us. We're so excited to be here, and I hope you'll forgive me, but I do have to use my notes. So and there's many people to thank. The reviewers and the event planners who worked with me. Sharon Anderson from Cape Cod Publishing.
Will we stand up?
Yes, if you would. Deb Kibilis is not with us today, but she designed the cover for the book based on a 1907 postcard from of the Hyannisport Pier. And it was part of the Centerville Historical Museum's collection, and they were gracious enough to let us use it. And also Deb made all these images really pop in the book, so we're very grateful. Sue Sullivan from the Barnesville Land Trust, who got the word out, and I appreciate that. And especially my family, who has had to listen to me prattle on about this project for 3 years. My loving and patient husband. And last but certainly not least, all of the people who contributed to this book and took a chance and helped me make it come to fruition. Can I have all the contributors to the book just stand up for a minute? Okay. Thank you all so much. So the inspiration for this book came from, in the early days of the pandemic, we had nothing but time. And so I started researching the 1918 flu. And what really surprised me is, first of all, it's often referred to as the forgotten flu. And there was not really a whole lot of personal accounts of the flu. And even in medical journals, textbooks, and encyclopedias, it was just really kind of glossed over. And of course, people didn't realize that it was happening outside their families and outside their neighborhoods. But certainly they didn't know it was a global event. But of course, today we live in that 24-hour news cycle. So I'm quite sure that there'll be plenty written and dramatized about COVID-19. There were some books that the Catherine Ann Porter's Pale Horse, Pale Rider is a novella that is specifically it's semi-autobiographical about what she went through with her fiance during the flu. Virginia Woolf talks about it in Mrs. Dalloway, and Thomas Wolfe has a really just gut-wrenching account in Look Homeward Angel about his brother dying from the flu. But again, very few personal accounts. People were just so weary from the World War I was just sort of wrapping up, and that had been devastating for the whole world. And also people just wanted to move on from the pandemic. So as I said, I'm sure that there'll be plenty written about this. However, we wanted to capture this experience from a wide cross-section of voices, specifically in our little corner of the world. I just realized I need to move over so the owl can grab me. This is called the owl up here. So it'll be recording, and this will be available on the library's YouTube channel. So anyway, we kind of went, did a little old school with a twist. So my loving husband helped me create, flyers, and we went from the top of the Cape to the tip. And we posted flyers in post offices and libraries and grocery stores. And, but what the twist was that it has, had an online submission form, which really was extremely helpful. And then we did outreach to libraries and historical societies and multicultural organizations, and they all promoted it on their social media. So, and another goal was to create a historical record of this unprecedented time. And so we were fortunate to collaborate with the Dickerson Archives over at Cape Cod Community College. So now they have a special collection that is, they're still processing the collection, but that will be available for future generations. Well, to us, but also for future generations. Ultimately, we wanted to tell a story, our story, a story told by many voices about the shared experiences of the pandemic against the backdrop of the beauty and splendor of Cape Cod. The other goal was we wanted to give back. So a portion of the proceeds of this book are going to go to the Cape Kid Meals program. I don't know how many are familiar with that program, but they started in 2014 in 2 schools, and now they're serving 900 students weekly in 34 schools from Bourne to Provincetown. And the schools identify children in need, and they inform Cape Cod Meals, and they prepare a weekend backpack of food to get them through the weekend, because they have free lunch. Everybody in Massachusetts gets free breakfast and lunch now, which is amazing. But, you know, 1 in 6 kids on Cape Cod are, you know, experiencing food insecurity. So they really are kind of, you know, stuck on the weekend. So they fill up a backpack. It's very discreet. They just take the backpack home with them, and it has enough food for them for the weekend. They also provide school snacks for children who can't bring anything from home, and they have piloted a program in the middle schools and the high school for a food pantry. So kids, anybody who wants to grab something, they can. So anyway, we're glad to be partnering with them, and we hope I mean, I don't think this is gonna be on the New York Times bestseller, so I don't know that we're gonna have thousands of dollars to give them, but whatever we have, we'll be so happy to give them. Okay, so we're going to provide you with a preview of this book, and through various readings that people have offered to do. And to give you a sense of the spectrum of authors in the book, we have several authors who will share what they have written. All of these images are in the book, and so we're doing a multimedia event here. And we hope that today will be an opportunity for you to reflect on what this experience has meant to you. And we'll have a discussion later about, I'd like you to consider these 2 questions. So based on your pandemic experience, what are you glad to leave behind? I bet that's a long list. But what will you carry with you? So think about that as we go along today. Thank you. Okay. So first up, we have Mike Andrews. In the spring of 2021, Mike Andrews, an English language arts teacher at Arntsville Intermediate, invited his students to reflect on how the pandemic had affected their lives. He'll share his reflections on the courage and bravery his students displayed during the pandemic.
Three rows of desks sat empty in my classroom, 6 feet apart, cosmically fastened to the ground with little yellow X's, as if the electrical tape had the strength to bolt them to the floor. For the first time in over a decade, I was starting the school year not by decorating the walls of a 6th grade classroom, I was sanitizing it. I was double checking protocols, rereading memorandums and agreements. At the opening of the 2020 school year, I'd met my students online. They would be small squares on a patchwork screen. Sound would cut in and out. Some screens would stay quiet, only a black box with a small script in the corner. Kids wouldn't set foot into their school buildings until October, if they came in at all that year. The shock of living through the COVID-19 pandemic permeated so many aspects of school life upon the return. Group work was prohibited. Lunch was eaten silently with seating spaced out. Classes were cut short in order to wipe down desks, our early attempts to control a virus we all knew so little about. I miss so many of the moments I yearned for as a teacher. The roundtable discussions, the laughter of goofy middle schoolers, pep rallies and after-school sports, the smiles that masks hid. I saw half of my students in person while the other half worked from home online. For months, cohorts A and B only mingled in Zoom rooms, never in person. Yet through it all, our students worked to show up. They showed up for 7:50 a.m. conference calls when they could have slept in and ignored the alarm. They showed up with masks fastened tightly, ready to share ideas with muffled voices. And they showed up in their writing. Reading the following accounts of my now high school age students, these snapshots in time show the courage it took to just be an adolescent during the tumult and trauma of a global pandemic. These young people took a brave chance to share what life for an 11-year-old was like during these early months that ravaged what we knew of our world. As I pen my own reflection, years after I assigned my own students to write theirs, I'm struck by the authenticity and the vulnerability that kids are willing to share. Even distanced, monitored, tested, kids find a reason to push on, no matter the fear of discomfort. They refuse to stop living for the now. I hope we can all take a page from a sixth grader to tell the truth and find the light in the darkest of situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. When kids first learned that school would be closing initially for 2 weeks, they were elated. But what started as a dream quickly turned into a nightmare. 3 years later, Adam White is here to tell us what it was like from the perspective of a middle school student.
Yes, I was a child during the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, I am a member of one of the first families on Cape Cod that had to quarantine due to COVID-19. And yes, all of my favorite activities got canceled, and I felt like I got hit by a plane when COVID-19 entered my life. Yes, I also had to deal with it just like everyone else did during the COVID-19 years, 2020 to 2021. When COVID first came to Massachusetts, I was in 5th grade, 11 years old, on Friday, March 2013 of 2021. I was on the bus on my way home from school when the bus driver announced that we would have 2 weeks off from school. A neighborhood friend and I ran back home and went right out to play. We couldn't believe this was happening. Then that night, when I came in from playing outside to eat dinner, I got the bad news that my family had to quarantine because a person sharing a classroom with my mom had COVID, and her husband was the first patient in Cape Cod Hospital with COVID-19. This meant that I couldn't go see and play with my friends. I was devastated. A few days later, my mom was unable to taste anything and felt really sick. Every day she tried getting a test, but no luck because she didn't have a fever. A week later, she continued to feel sick, so she lied and said she had a fever so they could test her. It took almost a week to get her results back, and she was positive. My mom was in a small group of Cape Codders who had tested positive for COVID-19. Our family friends at the Barnstable Police and Calm Fire Department had heard about the news and were calling to check in on us. We had to quarantine for 2 more weeks. Together, my family spent our time walking outdoors, bike riding, and rollerblading. We were lucky that no one else in my house ended up really sick. We still don't know if any of us had COVID since a year ago. Being exposed did not get you a test. When we finally got out of quarantine, school was over and hockey got hockey was canceled for the rest of the year. Recently, when school started back, I didn't know how to feel about anything, and more than anything, I was unsure of how anything was going to be, because I was joining a new hockey team with COVID still around. The mayor wasn't going to let a bunch of kids go hitting each other without masks in the middle of the pandemic, so I was scared that hockey wasn't gonna happen. Hockey has always been a big part of my life, and I couldn't go a year without it. Also, school was starting remotely, but the big problem was that I was entering a new school with new classes and teachers. It was a big step from elementary school to middle school. When I showed up for my first remote class, I was lucky because I knew most of the kids in my class, and that's when I knew it would be a good year.
By the way, who knows the difference between a writer and an author? Ms. Sharon?
No. A writer is someone who hasn't been published. An
Right.
author is someone who has.
So all of you people in the book can now call yourself authors. Mickey Kilroy captured the fear and anxiety of the early days of the pandemic and how her attitude of gratitude helped her sensibly survive during the unknown and the uncertainties of the time. Becky?
Many of us are trying to do our best to cope with an unprecedented situation. My heart goes out to the frontline workers who are selflessly caring for anyone requiring medical care. They truly are devoted to their profession and exhibit tremendous bravery. Having worked as a nurse for over 50 years, I feel I have some firsthand knowledge of the situation. It is almost impossible to comprehend how stressful a 12-hour shift can be for these caregivers. Even under the best of circumstances, it requires stamina and self-sacrifice. Usually they work short-staffed. That has been the norm for many years. Meals are often missed and frustrations run high. A diligent effort to pass a safe staffing bill failed miserably in 2019. There might be a different outcome if the vote came up this year, but I digress. TV and Facebook postings show just how taxed these workers are on any hospital floor, especially in the ED, where I spent 19 years serving those in need. Their safety should come first and foremost. How absurd to ignore the very essence of sensible survival for them and us. For most of my adult life, I have been a very positive person. Headlines and media stories send sadness and fear throughout communities. So many people are impacted in different ways. Physical, emotional, and financial worries only add to their coronavirus concerns. But focusing on the creative efforts of hundreds of people has helped me to see that there is hope and happiness ahead for all of us. A dear friend with sewing expertise started making face masks from scrap fabric to help anyone wanting to cover their nose and mouth. She is just one extraordinary example of personal ingenuity that resulted in relieving someone else's tension. Staying home and avoiding contact with family and friends is a true stressor for even the youngest affected by isolation. My 6-year-old grandson has been begging his mom to take him to visit Grandma Pat or Rara Peggy. It is heartbreaking to listen to his plea on FaceTime. His 2-year-old sister wants to touch me through the screen and even give me kisses via the phone. Those tender moments bring tears to my eyes, pain to my heart, and hope for the end of this anguished situation. Like any grandparent, I feel truly blessed to have these children in my life. The constant craziness surrounding this pandemic has affected people in different ways. We are inundated for hours on end by media coverage that focuses on the dramatic and depressing statistics from those who have been infected, as well as the staggering fatalities. These numbers are rising at a rapid rate with no end in sight. Frightened healthcare workers struggle under dangerous working conditions that imperil their lives. Our government seems more concerned with popularity than providing PPEs for the courageous caregivers who face significant dangers daily. Who would have thought just 4 months ago that toilet paper would become a coveted commodity? using the power of prayer has helped me to cope with the challenges of confinement. Humor and a bag of potato chips also keep me functional. A new wardrobe may definitely be necessary if I am ever able to venture in public again. Every morning, I drag my bulging body out of bed and do some stretching or yoga to begin the day with a familiar routine. While in the shower, I dream of a nourishing breakfast. Some semblance of house cleaning is on my to-do list. Those dust bunnies will not get the better of me. Even on chilly, raw days, I force myself to go out for at least a 45-minute power walk. It's not hard to keep 6 feet of distance while getting some fresh air. Trying to stay 6 feet from my refrigerator is a depressing dilemma. Seeing others struggling with the same perplexing problem is comforting. With no clinic work, I have seen my income decline. As the bills keep mounting, I swallow my pride and make calls to various entities. Knowing that my story mimics so many others, it was no surprise that little or no assistance was available. Putting off payments this month is just a temporary fix. Next month, the amount due will double unless money falls like manna from heaven. I don't see how postponing the inevitable will salvage my situation. Financial planning was never my strong suit, but I have the will to find a way. On a more positive note, reconnecting with friends and family can restore often overlooked relationships. Talking or texting to those in a similar situation offers helpful healing to long neglected connections. Even my snowbird siblings are sharing their stories of struggling in the sunshine. No sympathy for me on that score. My sister Pat returned early from Florida to shelter in a place at her home in Northeast Ham. She had missed her 5 young grandkids and needed that injection of energy to continue her resolve to reclaim survival skills. Several decades ago, while in college, she participated in Outward Bound. That experience may have earned her more understanding and more expertise than the average person. My son served 2 tours in Fallujah during the Iraq War. Because his unit was stationed at the last stop for the supply truck, he learned to stock up on as much as possible. Food was one of the only pleasures they enjoyed. As a result, he had essentially hoarded dry goods and non-perishables in our basement for over 2 years. Imagine my surprise when he opened the closet door and showed me his stash. I had teased him on many occasions when he brought home 6 cans of soup and numerous packages of pasta. He justified his spending with, but everything was on sale. Too bad toilet paper was not among his purchases. If we learned anything from this destructive disease, I imagine most people will emerge more energetic, remarkably resourceful, and consciously creative of their capabilities. As fate would have it, my clothes dryer began growling like an angry caged animal. Each laundry load is done with a fervent prayer that the machine will survive for another day. Buying a new one will create a hefty hole in my already bleak bank account. Again, I count my boundless blessings. The electricity is still on. If there was a time to believe in and practice the golden rule, this is that time. Be helpful and kind to everyone you encounter, even at a 6-foot distance. My neighbor is 96 years old and lives alone. She is mentally alert, but essentially wheelchair bound. Each time I call her, she cheerfully answers the phone. My question is always the same, as I ask if she needs anything. For over 8 years, her reply has always been, "No thanks, I'm all set." Until last week, in early April, she joked about potentially using the newspaper for toilet paper. I shared this info with my son, and he immediately went on a quest to find some for her. After numerous stores, he was victorious. When I brought her this gift, her face lit up like a child's on Christmas morning. Such a simple act, but it made our hearts happy to have been helpful. Some lessons learned from my forced confinement are similar to the Al-Anon prayer, which reads, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference." My attitude of gratitude has assisted me in sensibly surviving this unknown and uncertain time in all our lives. Perhaps in the not too distant future, we can resume what we once knew as normal. Let's not forget how much we missed so many simple things and continue to cherish our family, friends, fresh food, and most importantly, that elusive toilet.
Next reader, Eamon Camp, just happens to be my grandson. Eamon, like all of us, longed to be with family and friends during the pandemic. And at the age of 9, he came up with a plan for visiting safely.
My name is Eamon. My experience with COVID is family time. Although my parents are working from home, it's still more time at the house. Now my dad can read or play with me earlier because he doesn't have to take the train to work anymore. And my mom doesn't have to drive to school to pick me up. Now that it's summertime, we usually visit my Nana and Papa on Cape Cod. But because of COVID, it's a lot trickier. We found a way that's safe to go though. Here's the way. Organize a time you can visit with your family. Talk to who you want to visit and make a plan with them. Keep yourself quarantined for a whole week before you go visit them. Go visit and have fun. After your visit, wait a whole week before you go again. We hope you try that out. Have fun, be safe, be happy.
So Corinne Lilly, in addition to being a fabric artist, is also a watercolorist. And she helped organize the display that's up here from some of our artists. And again, those are all being displayed on the screen as well. And during the pandemic, she spent a lot of time knitting and from the yarn that she had actually made, and she's got some samples up here as well. So, and it inspired her to do the painting. Corinne?
Fortunately, I'm a self-employed professional artist, so my work situation changed little during the pandemic, except for my inspirations and of course opportunities to sell my work. I decided to share through my watercolor painting what helped me cope during the COVID pandemic. Always relaxing and now having more time, I did a lot of knitting. So I decided to do a watercolor painting of a girl knitting, entitled it COVID Pastime. This painting since has been accepted in several national watercolor exhibits, including the Georgia Watercolor Society exhibit in Atlanta.
Wow.
Besides my main medium watercolor, I'm also a fiber artist. That is, I work with fibers, wool, cotton, silk. I spin these fibers into yarn, then dye them with natural dyes using my own dyes derived from plants, roots, bark, berries. Queen Anne's lace is one of my favorite flowers to use to make a dye pot. I knit or weave in my hand spun naturally dyed yarn. When you knit, you do a lot of thinking. And during my COVID knitting time, I concluded that I have few regrets, but a lot of wonderful memories. I thought about all the wonderful, exciting, and rewarding experiences I've had in my life, the fun and special moments I've experienced raising my wonderful son, Travis, and the wonderful relationship we continue to enjoy. And how lucky I am to be back home here on the Cape, painting and selling my work on the sidewalk as I did in the beginning. I saw my first painting on the sidewalk in Falmouth when I was 18 years old and attending Mass College of Art. I'm now happy and content to be back selling my paintings on the sidewalk on Cape Cod.
Kim Delaney is going to share the joys and challenges of a rambunctious puppy and the fear that he might send her to the ER during COVID.
For some background information, my dog's name is Quinn, and we were out on the flats in Dennis one morning in October. Quinn, I called on this cool October morning. Quincy, come. My 47-pound pup has taken off in hot pursuit of the promise of a romp with the golden on the other end of the beach. I'm hurrying my 53-year-old self in pursuit of him. He's having a really good time. Winded, all I can think is, how the heck am I going to catch up to him? Quickening my pace, I remember my dog training idol, Victoria, talking about how puppies love to be chased and how you should instead stop, change direction for your gooch to follow. Thinking this sounds somewhat reasonable and probably more so because of her lovely English accent, I stop and call Quinn, come. and take a few steps in the other direction. Amazingly, it works. My boy in all his glory is racing across the flats towards me. Good boy, I call, as I revel in the thought that I can train as well as Victoria, and marvel at the fact that I do actually have the best dog in the world. As he gets closer, I am amazed at how quickly he moves and how his puppy awkwardness is giving way to sheer muscle. Isn't he great? I think as he draws closer. Look at how fast he can run. He looks so happy. He loves me so much and he can't wait to get back to me. Good boy, I call as he bounds towards me. My pride gives way to puzzlement as I wonder when he will stop or if he can. He is moving quickly, too quickly. This I realize as he barrels right into me. I hear it before I process what's happening. Thump against my knee and thump again as my airborne self is flattened onto the sand, somehow landing on my puppy. I manage to grab his collar before he scrambles away. And as I lay there on the sand, wet with the morning tide, I am sure that my leg is broken, or my neck, or at least an arm. Afraid to move, my thoughts race. How embarrassing it will be to call an ambulance. What will I do with the dog when I am taken to the hospital? I'll call home. Mark may be up. He'll help me. What if the tide comes before I get help? Will I wash out to sea? October is a really active month for sharks. Will they get me? Is it punch them in the eye or is it punch them in the nose? I don't want to go to the ER. COVID is there. Who will walk Quinn while I'm in a cast? I can't believe this happened. Shoot, I bet the owner of that other dog saw that. How embarrassing. Stupid dog, I'm too old for this. The sand is really wet and I'm soaked. Lying there for what seems like an eternity, these thoughts and more rush through my mind. I want to cry. I want to yell. I want to. A wet tongue gingerly touches my hand and a mound of yellow fluff flops down by my side. I tentatively lift my head and look over at the sweet face that is oblivious to all that could have gone wrong and smile. Good boy, buddy, you came. Thank you.
Diane Griffin Munsell will share a story about how her and her husband David's barn became a canvas to inspire conversations about racial inequity. If you watch the slides, you will see various stages in the creation of this mural. Diane?
Good afternoon. I'm Diane Munsell. Excuse me. I'm a hospice nurse here on the Cape, and I just have to say that during COVID, my husband, who's self-employed, and I were home a lot, and we had a lot of time to think, and we actually became activists. So this piece is on the mural on 6A, and then we also did a daily ticker. It's actually the house that you'll see on there with the grim toll of the deaths that happened throughout COVID. This one's entitled Baldwin on the Barn. In May 2020, after the murders of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and I'll add Ahmaud Arbery, my husband David and I were amazed at the number of people who came out in the middle of a pandemic to protest what was going on in our country. We were both moved, and while we felt very stuck in our own little world surrounded by COVID, we knew we needed to do something. While working in the yard at our carriage house, David looked up, and staring at him was a 10 by 20 canvas on the main road, 6A, Barnstable Village. He thought, maybe I should paint a quote from Maya Angelou. With that thought, he called our 4 adult children the smartest people we know, and they started discussing possibilities. Our son Mike suggested asking a local Black artist to create something that would inspire conversations about the difficult subject of racial inequities and systemic racism in America. David immediately reached out to an old friend from Barnstable High School, Joe Diggs. David offered Joe the canvas and asked him to paint what you feel would be inspirational. Joe jumped on it and contacted local muralist Jackie Reeves, and within a few weeks they arrived with a projector and tools. A majority of the people who had seen or heard about the mural have been very supportive. To us, it was all about having conversations about racial inequities. Since the completion of the Baldwin mural by Joe Diggs and Jackie Reeves, David and I have been honored to meet hundreds of people who stopped by, some with tears in their eyes, to share their personal experiences. We have had scores of conversations with the people of all ethnicities, but for the mural, we never would have. As James Baldwin wrote, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. This year, in the middle of a global pandemic, many of us are looking hard in the mirror and facing some uncomfortable truths about racism in America, climate change, and a myriad of other important social issues. Our hope is that the exhibit not only starts conversations, but more importantly, inspires action. And if Joe is here, or Jackie, I've invited them, they said they were gonna try to make it, I was gonna introduce them. And the other thing I'll tell you is that with the mural, we did hold a few months later during COVID and had to follow all those COVID protocols, 6 feet apart in rows. We held a beautiful art exhibit at the barn, and we had about 15 local artists, and we asked them to bring their inspiration of what COVID has done. We had a young artist that did homeschooling at home, so she painted a mural of what homeschooling looked like, and it was all online. But we had some amazing artists show up and had a lot of people come through, and we followed all the COVID protocols. Thank you.
Eliza Blanchard is gonna read a poem about beating the heat, literally and metaphorically, on Great Island in Wellfleet.
So the two things that saved me during COVID were writing and being able to come to Cape Cod, which was a childhood home for me. In the writing, I found myself reverting to forms that had a lot of repetition because, let's face it, one day was often very much like the other, especially for those of us who were newly retired. The form, which you can probably see better in print than you will hear, is a repetitive form. It's called a ghazal. It's an Arabic, it originated in the Middle Ages as an Arabic love poem. So I consider this my love poem to Cape Cod. Great Island, Wellfleet. Last August, we quit, cried defeat by heat-pounded sand. Rebounding sharp beats of heat roasted our feet, forced our retreat until spring. First chance back, we complete with less heat our trek to old tavern ruins that cling to wooded dunes. Sailors escaped the heat-soaked decks in mugs. Did maids and shanties bring tears or ghosts of those who shared the heat and sweat? Disease or heavy nets could swing a man right off his feet, from fevered heat to icy grave. Drink to drown the sting of gull sobs, seals falling, and squalid heat below, where hammocks swing like empty slings. Masked, we shed coats in unaccustomed heat along with hats. Our bodies blithely fling off one extra layer, find happy heat welcomes us to bend, comb the shingle, claim coupled scallop shells, a gull skull, heat scoured, bleached, from hidden in nests of stringy wrack, memento of life's transient heat. Nearby bony flanges from bird's breast sing of hungry sunlit flights, bold fissures by heat lifted cloudward, translating space with wings. At land's end in a hollow, scented by heat-hugged pine and salt air, it's easy to wring penny candy joy from such careless heat, to dream that suns return and shots We'll bring cold beers, high tides, ice creams to beat the heat. Buoys clang, church bells, Elijah, ring noon as town and poem begin to heat.
Our next reader is a retired FBI agent who authored a very exciting true crime story called The Con Man and the FBI Agent. Dave Nadolsky and his wife Linda, like many snowbirds, were anxious to get out of Dodge when states began to close borders. He'll share that often humorous journey from Florida to Cape Cod with us.
Thank you, Dorothy. Good afternoon. My wife, Linda, and I are residents of Orleans, Massachusetts. I'm a retired from FBI agent, as Dorothy mentioned. And Linda and I have 3 daughters, all married and living in Massachusetts. We are blessed with 4.5 beautiful grandkids. 0.5 will be a whole person in September, when I wrote this. Jack is a happy, healthy boy now with 2 older sisters tormenting him. Linda and I are lucky to own a 2-bedroom condo in a very nice gated complex located in Punta Gorda, Florida, which is 20 miles north of Fort Myers. The complex is inhabited by wonderful people from all over the U.S., particularly from the Midwest and Northeast. We have a huge pool, tennis and pickleball courts, a great fitness center, and a large clubhouse. The landscaping is well manicured, and Linda and I drive down with our golden retriever Zoe every December and return home in April. The trip is a 3-day, 1,500-mile journey, but well worth the long drive. By December in New England, we are experiencing painful joints due to arthritis. The daylight hours are short and bleak as cabin fever sets in. Arriving in Punta Gorda is like Dorothy dropping into Oz. Suddenly it's warm, sunny, and beautiful. The grass is green, flowers abound, and after 2 days, our once painful joints are a thing of the past. We rejoin our fellow snowbirds and the party gets started. There are numerous indoor, outdoor restaurants, many of which are waterfront. Punta Gorda's downtown, once ravaged by Hurricane Charlie in 2004, is rebuilt, beautiful, and packed with people filling the numerous bars and restaurants. The historic residential area adjacent to the downtown was spared by Charlie, and the old, grand, colorful houses remind us of the historic nature of Punta Gorda. Linda and I constantly remark, this is paradise. Last season started like all the rest, but not long into our stay, Linda began to feel ill. She started to experience unusual pain in her head, and her vision, normally 20/20, became blurred. After several days in bed, she felt well enough to at least go into an urgent care facility for some tests. The test results the test resulted in a visit to the ER at our local hospital. The examining doctor was concerned enough to admit her and order a biopsy on her head. The biopsy returned negative, but her health was still impacted by something, so she remained in the hospital for several days. Eventually, the problem was diagnosed as shingles. With that diagnosis, we were able to get her home on meds. She was weak as a kitten and couldn't get out of bed. The pain was practically uncontrollable, so we saw a doctor specializing in pain management. Despite all this medical intervention, her recovery was very slow. By March 19th, Linda felt well enough to endure the trip back to Massachusetts. COVID-19 was starting to shut Florida down by this time. Our condo complex closed the pool, tennis courts, clubhouse, and fitness center, so we decided to get out of Dodge. We weren't sure we would be able to find a hotel to stay at on the way home, but luckily Marriott in North Carolina was available for our first night's stay. The following day, we got into the car and started north again. Rumors were that states were closing their borders. We were wondering, was gas going to be available? What about the rest areas? Linda declared we're not going to stop at any rest areas. Are you sure about that? I asked. I don't have adult diapers, you know. Well, too bad. Pull off onto a rural road. We aren't using public facilities. Also, I've been thinking we need to go straight home, so no more hotels, she said. We've got 900 miles to go and you can't drive. I'd let the dog drive, but she'd sound asleep and I can't wake her up, I can tell you. Linda looked at the GPS. It was 9 a.m. and the estimated time of arrival at home was 4 a.m. the next morning. Ah, you can do it, she announced. Step on it. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were drive-through at McDonald's. By midnight, we were crossing the George Washington Bridge and entering the Bronx. I was getting a little woozy, but we were the only car on the road. Amazing. I should do this all the time. We had downloaded a good book to help pass the time, and it kept me awake for the final stretch. The GPS was accurate. We pulled into our driveway at 4 a.m. As Linda unpacked a few essentials, I went in, turned the water on, and got the boiler humming. We dropped into bed and passed out. Of course, by this time, everyone everywhere was in lockdown. We had half a bag of potato chips and some bottled water, and we had no idea how to get groceries. The night before, Linda had texted our daughter Kate, who lives in Brewster, and told her of our schedule. So around noon, there was a knock on the back door. We got out of bed and opened up to find a large box filled with food. I looked out to see Kate and her husband, Dan, along with our two granddaughters, Emmy and Charlotte, hanging out of their car window waving, "Welcome home, Grandma and Papa. We love you, but we can't hug you because of COVID." Well, the world was changed. Things are different now, but the way I see it, some things may have gotten better because of it.
Denise Streisig is a witty poet who took a lighthearted approach to living through the pandemic.
Dorothy, thank you for undertaking this project. I wanted to part of it. Thank you. I'm just gonna do a spoiler alert before I read. Well, you don't have to be gifted, but if you so desire, you could sing this along to the habanero from Carmen. I listened to it 30 times before I wrote this. About what we miss. A virus has encroached upon our lands. We must wear face masks and wash our hands. No more handshakes, we cannot hug, for fear of acquiring this daily bug. We work in our yards, we stay at home. We hold conversations with the garden now. We shop online to avoid the masses of people not wearing PPE. They are just classless. It's novel, it's new, it's unseen, it's COVID-19. Shopping in stores is quite the task. My glasses fog from wearing a mask. Avoiding other shoppers requires guile. Don't go the wrong way down a one-way aisle. We miss our sons and their wives too. My brother-in-law Gerald and his wife Betty Sue. The writers group now meets via Zoom. I miss seeing everyone in the same room. We do things that we once scorned to avoid a virus that is airborne. We ride through town in our cars and head out past the Chatham bars. We miss the spontaneity of getting up to go to the Heritage Gardens or a movie show. We miss summer theater and dining out. Unable to go to a Sox game makes me pout. To see our friends, we bring our own stuff. Sitting 6 feet apart is pretty rough. You're on your own if you drop your pen. I pick it up, but who knows where you've been. We love to travel to see friends and places. Now we are wary of COVID invading our airspaces. Zooming and social distancing from family and friends is not the same. We hope and pray for an end to this crummy game. Thank you.
Our last but by no means least poet is Jenny Barber, and she wrote 2 poems that she'll share. The first poem is about how difficult it was not to be able to see anybody smile. And then the second poem, written post-pandemic, is about the joy of now being able to see people smile.
I'm Jenny, don't know why I'm a little emotional right now.
I wrote 2 poems for the book, and the first poem is called "I Cannot See You Smile." Sorry, one minute. Okay. I cannot see you smile. I can't see your expression on your face. Whenever I go outside, I'm afraid. Afraid to touch, afraid to smell, most important, afraid to breathe. I feel alone even when I'm with someone. I'm not able to feel comfort in just a hug from anyone. I can't feel pretty. I can't wear makeup to feel good, my lipstick would smear. I can't stand close. My hands are dirty and contagious. My clothes seem to be just as bad. Everything I bring into my home is contaminated. I feel safe inside after a day has passed when the germs have gone. This happens every time I leave my home. I could die early. As much as I hate the mask on my face, it might be one of the things that could save my life. The other is not to be around my family and friends, even strangers. Life as I know it these days, it's harder to get up in the morning. For I fear, what if this is the day I and my loved one get sick? It's scary, it's changed my life. I think I appreciate the little things more. I miss just everything. I miss trusting that I'll be okay without a mask. I miss seeing people smile. The second poem I wrote is called "I Can See You Smile." I can see you smile. When I go to hold your hand, I no longer need gloves. When I breathe in the air, I'm no longer afraid. When I stand beside you, I no longer need a mask. Germs no longer have me with death. Germs no longer control me. Living a life is now allowed. Living a life is now back to claim for ourselves. I can go out to eat at my favorite restaurant. I can go grocery shopping and touch the groceries. I can cough if I have a cold and not be afraid that I killed someone. I can go to the library and read a book or write. I can socialize with my friends and family at big family gatherings. I can socialize with strangers. I can put makeup on now. I can feel good about myself. I can be happy. I can see you smile. And I'm a little emotional. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Dorothy for putting the book together, and a quick thank you to my mother for everything.
So I'm going to come back to these questions. Probably been very distracted by all the wonderful readings, but, and just to have a short discussion about these questions. But in the meantime, please help yourself to refreshments. You might want to check out some of the art, and I wanted to bring this to your attention, this beautiful painting called Isolation, and I'll probably not get this name right. Janelle Copenhaver? Is that right? Yeah. So she was very generous, and she printed a lot of these postcards that you are welcome to take, and they're on the table over there with the other artwork. So get up, move around, get something to eat, get something to drink.